Hey, welcome to the Driven Stone Podcast, the podcast where two friends raise a glass and have a conversation. I'm Nick.
I'm Kyle. Hey, Nick.
Kyle.
What you want to drink?
Well, I got a bottle here.
Good.
I know.
It's a good start.
It is a good start. This is a bottle from the Compass Box Scotch WhiskyMaker.
Nice. Maker, you say.
The bottle actually explains Scotch WhiskyMaker. I'm going to read that to you.
Okay.
We are Scotch whiskey makers. This word, whiskey maker, is our word. It doesn't appear in a dictionary. To us, it combines product and process, making them one, defining our approach. Each whiskey begins with an idea, a vision, formed through a combination of traditional practice and our own inspiration. Different than a distiller, more than a blender, we are Scotch whiskey makers, which means we blend shit.
Well, and in a creative way.
Yeah.
I think that's what Compass Box is really known for is,
Sure.
Blending whiskeys together to try to create something unique and different.
Yeah, I agree. So this is the Peat Monster.
Oh.
Yeah. The bottle here has a version of the Peat Monster that they've created. And it reminds me a lot of Salvador Dali.
Yeah.
It's very
for sure.
surreal, Dali-esque. It kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah.
So this is a non-chill filtered, natural color, blended malt Scotch whiskey. It is a product of Scotland. So obviously they're not sourcing from MGP. They're sourcing from somewhere in Scotland.
Right.
I got some bottle words for you.
Ooh, my favorite words.
A peaty smoky Scotch malt whiskey, unlike any other peaty smoky Scotch malt whiskey. That's a mouthful right there, buddy. That's because it's our own blend of single malt whiskeys, creating a style no single distillery can create. This is a malt whiskey brimming with peat smoke character and accented by delicate notes of fruit and baking spice. It is balanced and full on the palate with a sweet impression and a very long finish. Sometimes we like drinking it with an ice cube and a splash of water. Sometimes we like it neat. Equally, we like it as a highball with ice and an effervescent soda water. You have options. Above all, share and enjoy. John Glazer,
Nice.
founder and whiskey maker.
Cool.
Yeah. All right.
Highball. Never had a highball.
Yeah, you have. You've had a cocktail.
Oh, is that all a highball is?
That's just the type.
Another word for cocktail?
Basically. Yeah, a highball is really a glass, like a tall glass. We don't have one here in the library.
I was thinking like a highball was like something specific.
Nah, just a cocktail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, here we go.
Lovely.
Wow.
Man.
Yeah, this is, it's not a brand new bottle, but there's been like maybe a sip out of this.
Or two.
I mean, maybe.
Maybe.
It's like a splash.
Sound makes you thirsty.
That's a good pour.
Thanks, buddy.
I'm heavy-handed on my pours here lately.
Lovely. All right, so in the glass.
Mm-hmm.
It's really light.
It's very light.
It actually appears darker in the bottle, and then once you poured it, it's really light.
We've said this a bunch of times with scotches. Like, I wonder if scotch makers have caught on that people are like, oh, you guys are adding color. And they're like, okay, so here's the actual liquid.
Right. For some reason, does a darker whiskey seem, I don't know, more masculine?
No, I think what a darker whiskey conveys to me and maybe most whiskey drinkers is age. Like if I've got a darker bourbon, I'm going to, think about, well, that's been in the barrel longer. But there's no age statement on the Peat Monster. But like even like a Lagavulin, like a 16-year Lagavulin, it's not a dark whiskey. A 16-year Lagavulin is not even as dark as like maybe even, Wild Turkey 101.
Right.
And I think that's a product of the fact that, when you're aging barrels in Scotland, there's not as much of a temperature difference. So you don't have as much of the liquid moving through the barrel.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, just personally, though, like I give it no regard.
I would
as
say,
far as I can.
Yeah, I agree. Now I agree.
Say.
Now I agree. I mean, if you were to, maybe 3 years ago, I would have said like, no, I want a darker bourbon or I want a darker whiskey. But now I don't. It doesn't really matter to me.
I am a little more off put if you were to tell me, yeah, we colored it. Because then I'd be like, oh, why? Because, I mean, to some degree, that's got to change what's happening.
I mean, at the very least, it changes your perception of what's happening.
Like, even if it's flavorless.
Right.
And you could technically be adding water into it anyway to bring down the proof or whatever. I just have to think that like that additive,
there's something
at
going
some
on.
level, it's changing something.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway,
what you got on the news?
In our blabbering here, I've already completely almost lost the beat. Like when you first handed it to me,
Yeah.
totally.
Peat,
Like got the peat right off the bat, but now it's like just sweet honey.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I noticed you nosing it while we were talking, but I just nosed it when I asked you what do you get, and you get like peat punch in the face.
Yeah,
but it's not briny peat. It's like smoky peat.
Yeah.
Also, with that peat, there's a lot of really nice, sweet honey notes.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I get like maybe some pear, maybe more of a pearish honey.
A Paris honey?
Parish. Just parish. Honey.
Parish.
Honey that had like a pear squeezed over it.
Oh, not like county in Louisiana.
Okay. Not a parish, no.
Okay.
Just parish.
You sound like Sean Connery trying to say Paris.
Parish Hilton.
James, where are you going? Parish. Parish. Yeah. It's fruity. Like I'll give you that. Like there's some fruity notes in there.
Citrusy? Not really.
No.
It's not citrusy. Like I want to say, I was thinking maybe like a Granny Smith apple, but I don't think it's apple.
No, you know what? It's like it's like you open a jar of like jam or preserves or something like that. Like it's not the actual fresh fruit, but it's like adjacent to that. You ever had that like super fancy like French jam and preserves with the checkerboard red top? Mm-hmm. Yeah, is it Bon Maman or something like that? Like it kind of reminds me of that, like an apricot preserve or maybe like a pear preserve, something like that. And the peat, and we've said this before about peat too. Peat tends to punch really hard and then like caress you afterwards, and that's exactly what I'm getting here, which kind of makes me a little fearful for the palate.
Although I feel like I am starting to get like a touch of like the briny.
I'm going in.
Just a flavor of it. Okay.
Ooh. Ooh. Yeah.
Peat. Yeah. Delightful.
Yeah.
Very smoky.
Yeah. It's not like a really bitter peat, and it's not a really salty, briny peat.
I lean more towards like ashy.
It's kind of like a post campfire.
Yeah, like an older smoke.
Yeah.
It's like it reminds me of char. Like on anything. Like
a good steak char.
Like a good steak char, like you over charred a marshmallow.
Right.
Just that kind of bitter char that is so well complemented by like the sweet fruity.
That's what I was gonna say. Like the malt, the sweet from the malt, the sweet from like that like touches of fruit in there. Man, it just delightful.
Pretty great, like mouthfeel too. Like it clings really well.
It really does. It doesn't drop you off a cliff. The proof here is 46%. So 92.
Oh,
that's pretty good.
That's a good kick for a scotch.
Yeah, it is. I mean, most scotches are 80. You can absolutely get higher proof scotches. We've had higher proof scotches for sure. But it's that friendly, but just a hint of proof.
Right.
Just a bit of a kick.
I mean, it gives you a little bite.
It gives you something to think about.
I could nose it all day.
For sure. I will say this. It's really even keel all the way through. It doesn't really change. There's not a whole lot of roller coaster here.
Good point.
And I both appreciate that and wish there was something more there. And why I appreciate it is because it gives you exactly what it says it's going to give you. Peat and some sweet malt.
Yep.
But it also isn't changing enough where you're going to have a different drink each time you sip through this glass.
Right.
It's pretty much going to be the same through the entire glass. At least that's my perception right now.
Yeah. And the name, I feel like, is also a little
misleading. Yeah.
It's not a Peat Monster.
Right.
This, to me, isn't suggesting anything overly peated from anything else that we've had.
Right.
Like, to say the Peat Monster, I would almost just be like, yeah, like I'm just licking an ashtray.
Ashtray?
Got
it.
But I'm not getting that. It's delightful. It's not off-putting. Like you'd almost expect that Peat Monster to be a little like, okay, I can't take all of that. Like,
no, I agree with you. I kind of want to equate this a little bit to beer because like my first experience with IPAs, like you first get an IPA and you're like, that's what that is.
Flavor.
And then like the kind of the experience of most people who like start to enjoy IPAs is like, okay, how bitter can I take this? Like what is the most, like what is too much?
Right.
In that journey, you kind of find it in various beers.
Sure.
But I agree. Like, if you're going to call something the Peat Monster, I almost want it to be like, ooh, no.
Yeah, like,
that's too much. But,
you're pushing your limits.
Right. The risk you have on that side is like, this is unenjoyable.
That's the only time you ever buy it.
Right. Exactly. That's
Somebody has it one time and they're like, okay, let's put that on the shelf.
Yeah.
And we'll use that for pranks.
Exactly.
They're
like,
people come over. You want to try a Peat Monster.
Yeah.
Okay.
You say you want something peaty. Well, I've got the Peat Monster right here. So like you risk that as well. So from a business standpoint, I totally get totally get that. And they're obviously looking for clever marketing. They're looking for a clever name. And the Peat Monster is a great name.
Yeah, totally.
And the liquid inside this bottle is delicious, but I don't know if I'd say Peat Monster. Yeah. So I know in terms of like the world of Scotch, generally, like most people consider the Lafroig to be one of your most peaty scotches. We actually have a bottle of Lafroig. I'm going to put it up against it because I want to know. I got it.
For sure.
But also like the Brooklotic Distillery, which we've had the Classic Lottie. Eventually, we're going to do the Isla Barley, which we have a bottle of that. We're going to get a bottle of the Port Charlotte. But the Brooklotic is generally considered the most peaty Scotch, and that's the Brooklotic, the Octomore. And there's like versions of that, and there's like this weird like parts per million way of like
peat scale.
Yeah, assessing peat. I actually had a chance to try it here recently, and
the Octomore.
Yeah, and decided not to do it. Nah, I'd rather the 18-year the Bunnahabhain, the 18-year Bunnahabhain. I had that over the Octomore, which I was happy with the choice I made there for sure. For sure.
It tastes like Christmas.
Yeah,
I get a lot of holiday essence.
I mean, it's delicious. It, like I said, it hasn't changed just in the couple 10 minutes that we've been talking about this or whatever. But also, I want a little bit something interesting.
I don't disagree, but I think it's like anything else that we have had that's like that has a good flavor.
Yeah.
When it's a good flavor and it's even kill, it's just kind of like, yeah, no, you got a good thing.
Oh, for sure.
You're not messing around with it. I think that's kind of what they've accomplished here.
Oh, absolutely.
I totally agree. Like, I'm searching for the roller coaster and it's just not happening. But it's like, yeah, but how do you fault what you got in the glass?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a really good point, because like me saying that is not saying that that's a negative. It's just a thing that I'm noticing about it. You know what I mean?
Right. And you don't always want to go on a roller coaster. Sometimes you just want to sit in the lazy river.
Absolutely. That's the best metaphor. That's great.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, it's just sometimes that's what you're in the mood for.
Yeah. All right. So we have a bottle of the Lafroig. I say we put the Lafroig up against the Peat Monster just for like a peat purpose.
Okay. A second cork pop in an episode is always a good thing.
You're not wrong. Little dribble.
Just a taste.
Thank you, sir.
Definitely a bit darker.
It really,
surprisingly,
it actually is demonstrably demonstrable. See what I did there?
Demonster.
It's demonstrably darker.
Nosing it, it even smells darker. The sweetness in the Lafroig is a darker sweetness. It's more of a brown sugary.
Oh yeah,
kind of darkness compared to the fruity brightness of the Monster.
Oh yeah. Like that's brown. You know what? Like the Lafroig now, smelling it reminds me of like oatmeal. Like it's like brown sugar packaged oatmeal.
Yeah, man, wow. That's surprising. Like but that's never been anything I've ever thought of.
No. And interestingly, I'm not getting any peat on the nose.
Me neither. I mean, no peat and no proof.
No, which I think it's 80.
It's probably an 80, so that makes sense. But
yeah. But like no peat. Normally, like I open this bottle, I'm like, Everybody, hang on.
There's not a fire. It's just a Lafroig.
Yeah. I mean, Lafroig is one of those, like, if I have a pour of this and my wife is in the same room, she's like, oh, God, what are you drinking?
Well, and that's normally one of the ones that you pour it and it's like immediately it's in the air.
It fills the room. Yeah, for sure.
All right. But yeah, nothing.
All right, I'm going in.
Just brown oatmeal.
Oh, but it's definitely there on the palate. I mean, you get a lot of brown oatmeal, like burned sugar. That's the peat on the palate.
The peat bitter on this kicks. And it hangs the whole time.
And it's a briny peat bitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's like licking a campfire put out with salt water. I mean, like that's what it feels
on the coast of Scotland.
Exactly.
You took the stones that are around the campfire, and the next morning you picked one up and just licked it.
You're right. You
know, it's had that salty sea air settling over it overnight. just kind of like encasing the ash.
The Lafroig just makes me want to have like a dark cigar, like just a big dark cigar.
Yeah,
and like a steak. Like that's
It makes me want to put on a coat. It just makes me feel like it's cold outside.
Yep.
And then I need to bundle up.
Well, I am wearing a kilt today.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
I noticed. Thank you.
A little bit of a Sharon Stone moment there. I'm sorry. I don't get that from the Peat Monster. Like the Peat Monster.
Go hug a sheep.
Exactly. Excuse me, madam. Can I have a hug, please?
Can I just cuddle up to this thing right quick?
Okay. Lafroig, winter. Like it's a winter, like a dark
totally.
winter scotch.
Yeah, for sure.
Peat Monster, spring, early summer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Bright.
Like, and fresh and like fruity. The Lafroig, like dark, deep. Sit with this, chill with it for a little while.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's makes a crap ton of sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
You go back to the Compass Box, and it's like it tastes like wine now. Like it's so fruity.
Whoa.
Yeah, right. Preference?
Ooh, that's not fair, man.
It's
really not.
It's not fair, but if you could have another pour,
I like them both for different reasons.
I don't disagree.
I'm gonna say like right now, I'll just literally base it right now. I think I'm gonna have another pour of the Peat Monster.
Man, I'd say the same thing.
Just because the sweet, the fruit, the kind of the friendliness.
Sunny outside.
Yeah,
it just
spring
fits
in
the
Florida,
moment
so it's 95 degrees outside.
Totally.
Yeah,
it just kind of fits a little better now.
Speaking of which, like there was like a day of winter back 2 days ago.
A couple of days ago. Yeah, it was weird.
It was weird.
Threw it in there at us.
It dropped into the 60s.
Yeah, it was bone chilling.
I got my parka out again.
I felt it in my core.
In the Scotland takeover of 2022, the Dreppenstone Scotland takeover.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll have to hit all of the Isla scotches.
Bro, I've already got them tagged on my Google Maps.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we hit all the Isla scotches, and then we pop on over to Compass Box.
Say, hey, what are you guys doing?
Yeah. What
do you
y'all
have?
What y'all got?
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Show me your hand.
Compass Box too. Is known for like kind of pushing some of the scotches, and they're all like slightly different. They're all slightly aged different. They're all slightly like in a different kind of realm. Yeah, aged in different barrels. So I like the company, man. I like what they got going on in the bottle, and I like their whole kind of aesthetic as a whole too.
Totally.
So now that we've got
a couple of drinks,
what do you want to talk about this week?
Well, I'm a huge fan of nerddom, and
likewise
a bit of a I guess cultural moment of nerddom just wrapped up a week or so ago.
March 12th, I think, was the last episode.
Earlier this month, Marvel wrapped up a little show.
Yeah.
Called WandaVision.
Absolutely.
And we've both now completed it.
We did, as of like literally an hour ago.
Nice. So we can talk about it.
For sure we can. We referenced that in the cultural globalization episode.
Totally.
A couple weeks ago.
Yep.
So at that point, I had only watched up to like episode 4.
Right.
And the final episode was coming out that week.
Right.
So we have a little bit of space, and interesting, like we have some space to kind of like think about kind of the ramifications that have come of this.
Right.
Since then, Marvel has also released The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Correct.
So we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to reference that because that's a whole nother step. So before we get into this conversation about WandaVision, let's agree to not have spoilers from here until a certain point. You good with that?
Okay.
Okay, so we're not going to spoil. I mean, maybe talk a little bit about the first couple of episodes, which I think most people probably, if you're listening to us, you've kind of gotten the idea at this point. But we're not going to spoil really any of the last half of this season.
Okay.
Until we'll tell you. We'll give you a warning. How about that?
Heads up.
Yeah, how about that? Is that good?
Sounds good.
Okay. WandaVision, start to finish, 9 episodes.
Yep.
Did you like what they did here?
Personally, yes.
Okay.
And that is as a huge Marvel nerd.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine I'm your average viewer of Marvel
I
things.
would say you are not the average viewer, but you're also not like super uber nerd.
Okay, sure. I'll accept that. So, for me, somebody that like knew what was happening, I was all in from the first scene.
Sure.
For me, Marvel's earned my trust.
Right.
So the way they released the episodes were, I watched them as they released, as they were released. I was not like you and waited till the end and then binged it. Which, kudos for you, because I think that's actually probably like the better way to watch it.
See, I have some thoughts on that, but we'll get there.
The original release was they released the first 2 episodes together.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both around like 25 minutes long.
Yeah, but let's be honest, there's like a 5-minute credit scene. So
for sure.
They're actually like somewhere around 19 minutes.
And those first 2 episodes, you're not really given much of anything.
Nothing.
Like you all you know is the characters.
Right.
So if you're somebody coming into this...
But let's stop there for a second, though. Knowing these characters, honestly, they are, in terms of the MCU, they're kind of peripheral characters in that, like, yes, they both have a huge part to play, but they're also not Spider-Man, Tony Stark, Thor.
Right.
Like, they're not those characters.
Yeah.
They're, I don't want to say lesser,
yeah,
but they kind of are.
Right.
So, go ahead.
Well, all right. So, like, either way, though, going into it, it's the only thing you're given in those first couple of episodes is I know Vision and I know
Wanda Maximoff.
Wanda.
Right.
And so that's all you're given. Like, you have nothing else to base anything on.
Yeah.
So it's just, so you're invested just because it's like, I know Marvel, I know they make great movies, so I'm going to trust them on this.
Right.
If you didn't have that and they just gave you WandaVision, this would have been a horrible flop.
I agree.
Of a thing.
I agree.
So it's a really interesting take on once you've built up enough, IP,
sure,
that you can then take that and do interesting things with it.
So for me, and for me, I grew to really, really love it. I mean, like, to the point of like, good on you, Marvel. And here's why. The first couple of episodes, I'm like, what the honest hell are you guys doing? What's going on here? You've got a character that's been snapped. You've got a character that's died. And now you've brought these people back together. And they have, obviously, a relationship, a love interest together, which you could kind of say is really not of their own making. It's really of the Mind Stone's making. A whole nother maybe conversation, a whole nother thread. But you've brought these 2 characters together. And like, what the honest hell are you doing?
Right.
Why I grew to love it is the answer to my Marvel fatigue.
Okay.
And that's Disney Marvel is, through WandaVision, willing to take a creative risk.
Totally.
And this was a huge swing for the fences creative risk.
Right.
Because you start, like you just said, you start with a couple of episodes that are just weird. You got this Leave It to Beaver kind of 50s and 60s with I Dream of Jeannie, and then
Dick Van
Dyke into this like 70s, 80s, and then ultimately through 90s and then the 2000s with kind of the Office,
Malcolm
references.
in the Middle.
Absolutely. Clearly, like, there's a
Modern
very
Family. Yeah.
Office-esque mockumentary style theme song and breaking of the fourth wall kind of thing. So you've taken me through television history, definition of creative risk.
Totally.
For an IP that is really known for formula. And that's essentially what Marvel's been. It's been,
no joke.
Character development and then formulaic plot throughout its existence. And I don't fault them for that, because clearly it works. But then you throw this little 9-episode gem, and it's not, it doesn't break 9 hours. I mean, each, like you said, each episode is anywhere between 25 and like, I think the last one's 49, but there's actually like a 7-minute end credit essentially. So,
right.
But the point being, like, good on Marvel Disney for realizing, like, we can play with this, we can take some risks. And if it flops, we almost lose nothing, because these are ancillary characters to some degree.
Sure.
I mean, they obviously have, like I said, they have a huge stake in what's going on in the MCU as a whole, but they're also characters if we screw this up, it's not going to wreck us.
Sure.
Ultimately, the first 3 episodes, a little rocky. I was like, what the hell's going on? I'm sure a lot of people were like, what the hell's going on? You get to that 4th episode and you're like, okay, I trust you again, because now I see where you're trying to go here.
Right.
Now I see at least you're not like throwing me into this weird, like, what the hell's going on?
And like, in your viewing,
yep,
is that how you did? How did you watch those first 4 episodes?
I watched the first 3 as they were released. So you get 2 episodes in the first release. and then the next week you got a third episode, and then I waited until just recently, honestly, before I watched 4 through 9.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Would you say that you were checked out after that third episode? You were just like, okay, I'm just gonna wait and I'll watch it all together. I'm not invested.
No, I was invested, but there's also that like life.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
Sure, like it wasn't convenient.
Yeah. And like Marvel is not something my wife enjoys, so it's hard for me to like carve out time to do that.
Sure.
So yes, I was invested, but like also things got in the way.
Right.
So like I wanted to see it. I knew I was going to see it eventually because I know you and I were also going to talk about it. We're going to have that conversation too. So like, but it was just kind of easier to wait until I had time to devote to it.
Right.
With that being said, though, I honestly think that maybe that period of like watching it every week and then being able to think about it and ruminate and talk about it and like look up crap, like we said in our cultural globalization of culture episode, I think that actually is a positive in this case. Like, yeah, I got like instant gratification of being able to start a new episode, which on one side is a positive, but on the other side, like I didn't get the, okay, what are they going to do next kind of thing, which I actually in this case missed.
Right. And that is such a balance because our viewing of it in the Drep House was the exact opposite. We watched it every Friday morning,
right,
when the new episode came out, and so then we had a full week to speculate.
Right.
Of what do you think that meant?
Yeah.
And I was totally somebody that like I just had the time to do it. So I watched a whole bunch of speculation videos.
Sure.
And it got into that whole thing of like speculating of like who's going to be the bad guy? Is it going to be Mephisto? Is it going to be Nightmare? Is it going to be whoever?
Right.
And that geared you up for like this huge reveal. And the cast and interviews that they did also kind of built upon this big, huge speculation train.
For sure.
That in the last episode,
was it a letdown?
I guess for us, it wasn't really a letdown. Like we felt like they tied it up really well, but there was certainly a sense of, oh my God, like, after you built up that anticipation after we watched the 8th episode, so second to the last, there was this like, man, that last episode's got to be like 3 hours long for them to tie up everything for all the questions that we've built up.
Right.
So then when that Friday came and we saw that it was like a 49 minutes, we're like, no way.
Yeah.
And so, perhaps we were a little disappointed.
Sure.
Just because we had questioned everything and because they didn't have the intention to answer everything. There was like a sense of, oh, well, the last episode is definitely not my favorite.
Right.
Okay. I see what you're saying in like that you missed out on the speculation.
Yeah.
But on my end, it was like the speculation, I can see where it totally took over.
Right.
And the ending just never could have possibly met that expectation.
I agree. Okay. Let's stop for a second.
Okay.
All right. So here is your warning. From here on out, we are probably going to be spoiling a lot of shit.
Okay.
Okay. You good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Full throttle.
Full throttle. Here we go. Okay. So, viewing aspect aside, I think what Marvel is doing now with the series, I was skeptical at first, but now that I've seen the first series, which I don't know what you've seen.
And to be fair, this was supposed to be the second series.
Right. They switched it around, I think because of filming or something like that.
Well, I assumed, like, the speculation was that there was something really important in Black Widow, the movie.
Right.
That was supposed to play into Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Right.
So they were trying to push that back so that they could eventually release Black Widow. You could see it so that when you watched Falcon Winter Soldier, that made sense.
Right.
I don't know if they've now gone and like changed
kind of retcon their
whatever
own stuff.
that is.
Sure.
Yeah, because of the contracts that they have with Black Widow.
Right.
But this was supposed to be the second
right,
thing.
because it was supposed to be Falcon Winter Soldier and then WandaVision.
Right. So there's a lot of things that people are saying, now, which may not be true either, but that, this was technically supposed to be like the third or possibly even fourth, now that I'm thinking about it, next Marvel entry into the MCU.
Right.
You were supposed to have already seen Black Widow, Falcon Winter Soldier, and I think the Eternals was supposed to come out in like November.
Oh, okay.
So this would have been like the fourth thing, and then all of a sudden it got thrown to leading into the MCU post pandemic stuff.
Which I would say works. I mean, I obviously I don't know what changes they made in order to like, it kind of do.
From what I've heard, it's like
work.
A lot of the stuff about like Quicksilver.
Okay.
That would make more sense had you seen all those other things. That might make more sense now. Like there might be something in either Black Widow or the Eternals, the movies, that are gonna help explain the X-Men.
Gotcha.
So that when you saw that version of Quicksilver from the X-Men,
it made sense.
You wouldn't have been like, oh shit, this is how they're doing the multiverse.
Gotcha.
And instead, the way that we saw it, there's all that speculation that we have now that had you seen that other stuff, that might not have been the case.
So what I will say with that, or to that, is like you're not necessarily the only different place you're left in from beginning of WandaVision to end of WandaVision is Wanda becoming the Scarlet Witch.
Right.
And like fully becoming Scarlet Witch. We've known that that's where her trajectory is headed literally since she was introduced in Age of Ultron.
Right.
Like that's where we knew she was going to go. And it was hinted at, it was talked about, but it was never like, you're the Scarlet Witch.
Right. Nobody ever called her
the
Scarlet Witch.
It wasn't until episode 8 that like, you are the Scarlet Witch. Like it was the end of episode 8, you're the Scarlet Witch.
Yeah. That's
really like the only big revelation in terms of her character development. Like that's really the only thing that kind of matters. I think that's the takeaway is like, she is fully the Scarlet Witch. Oh, and by the way, White Vision exists. Here you go.
Right. Like
that's really that's the only forwarding that essentially it's done for everyone except Wanda Maximoff.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Well, for sure. And it's one of those things of, comic book movies nowadays, like we don't just call you Iron Man. We don't just call you Captain America. We might call you Cap, but we also call you Steve, and all this other kind of stuff. So it was a different kind of thing. Like we, up until that point, we know your character is the Scarlet Witch.
We as an audience, not we
as an audience,
right.
But we haven't ever heard you referenced as that up to this point. So there's got to be a creative way that we can make you the Scarlet Witch. And it makes sense for us to call you that. Mm-hmm. We were at a point now with Wanda, this being her like 4th or 5th title.
Sure.
Being in a movie at this point, where still nobody had ever called her the Scarlet Witch, and we wouldn't just, within the MCU start calling you that as like a nickname or something, or like, Spider-Man references it. We're going to use our made up names. Oh, I'm Spider-Man.
Yeah. That's in what, Civil War, I think?
No, that's Infinity War.
That's Infinity War. Okay, that's right.
So we have to have at some point a reason to call you the Scarlet Witch.
Right.
And this was a really creative way to do that, to introduce that.
With the exception of Darcy and the exception of Rambo and James Woo, you really have no other characters outside of those 3, which really... Is Woo in anything else? What is Woo?
Woo. So that I thought that was brilliant. So Darcy is from Thor.
Sure.
Rambo is from
in Captain Marvel.
In Captain Marvel,
right?
Jimmy Woo is from Ant-Man.
That's right. Okay, that's right.
You're pulling in minor characters from 3 other aspects of the MCU and bringing them into this thing, so that now when they go back out, it's just more of a spider web that's connecting everything.
So that's what I'm saying. Like outside of those 3 characters who are all minor characters, which you're now giving them a bit of a voice, but like no other character knows what's going on. You could say White Vision does, but like this is a genesis of White Vision, which that's a whole like philosophical perception of like
fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Outside of like those minor, like no big name characters, the ones that are left anyway, they have no idea what's going on. So it's almost like bottle movie of like Wanda's really the only one who knows what happened in what actually I think it's Darcy that calls it the hex. Like she's the only one who really understands what's going on and understands the ramifications of what essentially she's done.
Right. Well, aside from the people in Westview, and I think it'll be interesting to see where they really do push the narrative from this point with Wanda.
Right.
But, they didn't push it really hard, but there was just kind of that scene of once the hex dropped.
Right.
And the people were just kind of like confronting her. There was like this, like, no, we're really pissed off at what you did. Like, what you did is wrong.
And to me, that's another one of those risks that Marvel has taken here, in that you've portrayed a central figure,
a hero,
absolutely, as doing a villainous act,
right? As
like controlling someone, mind control, mind control,
fuckery,
sure. To the point of like you've kept them from family, you've kept them from, and we don't know like the actual time span. This could be several days, could be several weeks, could have several months. Like you don't really have a good grasp of time,
right?
But a hero, for all intents and purposes, doing a villainous act. It's almost that like kind of Watchmen understanding of like, well, who's watching the Watchmen? And now you have that here. You have Marvel's, for the most part, played it safe, almost kind of in face of DC, of like the live long enough to become the villain kind of thing of Batman.
Right.
And like that's what you're seeing in Wanda.
Right.
Which I think is brilliant, in that you've now taken someone who has such just a dark past, and you've made her into this character that was supposed to be aligned with the Avengers, but also you understand why she's done this. And to me, this is really an exploration, and I've said it before, of what sets Marvel movies apart is it's this humanity aspect, and for me this is an exploration into grief, and that's what this is about.
Totally.
It's obviously it's all the superhero shit, it's all the other stuff that's building into this, but it's an exploration into like, what does grief cause someone to do?
Right. Yeah, it's the relatability.
Right.
Like if you take that aspect away, nobody cares about these movies.
Right.
If I can't relate to you, if I can't understand in some way and have an empathy of what you're going through, then the superhero shit doesn't matter. Like that's only cool for a moment.
Right.
Unless I care about you and what you're going through, then the action set pieces don't mean anything to me.
You care about Bruce Wayne only for like a microsecond because, oh, your parents were murdered. Like, yeah, we feel bad for you, but also we can't really connect with you because we don't like.
And I'd say it's the opposite. We care about Batman for a half a second, that you're having this huge battle with all these people. We care about all that because we know that you went through the shit of losing your parents and seeing them die in front of you, and this horrible thing that you had to go through, and that you then made the decision to become the Batman. And so now it's important for you to fight the bad guys. I don't care about the bad guys, and I don't care about all that stuff, but like I care about you now because I have empathy for you.
Right.
And it's the same thing I feel like with Wanda in this aspect of like understanding everything that she's going through. And I think I do have a bit of they should have, it was the reaction that Monica Rambeau had after the hex is dropped and Wanda's like walking through the town and everybody's kind of like giving her stank eye.
Yeah.
And Monica kind of comes up and is like, I understand why you did it.
I would have done the same thing.
I probably would have too, out of fear.
Yeah.
Just out of like, don't kill me.
No.
I understand why you did it.
She says, what I'm saying is she says that. Rambeau.
Monica says it.
Yeah, she basically says like, I would have done the same thing to get my mom back.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Monica just kind of walks up and says, hey, I understand why you did it. And I don't know that was the right thing. I feel like there should have been a little bit more of a push there of like, you shouldn't have done this.
I don't know.
Like, I understand, like, because you have the power to do this, and because you could do this, it doesn't mean you should have done this.
But I think what that does is it gives you that humanist perspective of like, these people that you've all controlled and kept from their families are really pissed at you because you've done that. And they are. You can tell. Like, she's walking this gauntlet. But then Rambeau looks at her and says, like, essentially, I would have done the same thing to get my mom back for even a second. I probably, if I could have, I would have done the same thing. Anyone who's gone through the loss of a family member feels the same way. Like, if I would sacrifice the ire of everyone I know just to have a coffee with that person. You know what I mean? And like,
Right.
you understand that. Like, yes, what you did was wrong. And inherently, I think Wanda Maximoff knows that as a character. Like, this was wrong. She says it. Like,
I think she got there.
yeah. Also understanding, like, it makes sense. That doesn't mean that you're justified in doing that, but we understand why.
I get it, but
Right.
you shouldn't have done it.
Exactly. And I think Rambeau fills that gap of like, yes. Now, she doesn't say what you did was wrong.
Right.
That maybe would have made
I guess
the
that's
point.
more or less it. As
Yeah.
I wish there would have been something there of just like, but
What you did was wrong.
yeah, like, like what are the ramifications of this? Like,
Sure.
you've mind warped this whole town
Exactly.
for weeks. There's got to be ramifications for that. Like, we can't just allow you to do that and be like, okay, oops, sorry.
Right. But on the other end of that, what Marvel has now done is they've introduced the audience to what amounts to the most powerful character in the Marvel universe.
Right.
I mean, I know you can find videos on like, who is the strongest and but the Scarlet Witch, all the.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Monica.
Oh, you think Monica's the most powerful character?
Well, shit that I've seen is like Monica's like, she's more powerful than Captain Marvel.
Really?
Because she can basically turn her body into any version of energy. So like she can like transform into
Interesting.
infrared, or she can turn into microwaves.
I don't know if that was. I don't know if that was presented very well.
It's not at all.
Yeah.
You would have to like know that
Sure.
to understand that
Sure.
that's her power set.
Yeah.
But like she eventually becomes Captain Marvel.
Right.
It's all this kind of stuff. I think that's a thing that Marvel does really well is, when we're first introduced to Scarlet Witch, we don't really like in Ultron.
Right.
We don't really think like, oh shit,
You're
she's
gonna
the most powerful Avenger.
Exactly.
Their power set, like as they learn to control it, grows with them.
Right.
And it's like,
And that's
brilliant.
and she
say the same thing about Iron Man.
100%. So she makes that distinction in like the 8th or 9th episode. She's like, I think it was really the 9th episode when she's battling whoever the
Agatha.
Yeah, Agatha. Which that's a question I want to bring up. But when she's battling Agatha, and after that, she basically like makes I don't know everything about who I am and what I can do, but I'm going to learn.
Right.
And you get that like cut at the end of the 9th episode. Where she's like figuring things out kind of in that cabin, maybe in like Colorado or wherever. She's like figuring things out.
Right.
But it's very clear like Marvel has now introduced us to up until this point, essentially to the most powerful character
Entity
that we have.
possibly.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's cool that they keep doing that.
Yeah.
Because we thought the same thing when we were introduced to Vision.
Exactly.
When we were introduced to Vision, we were like, oh God.
Yeah.
This dude can like phase in and out of shit, and he's got a fucking beam that comes out of his head. he's it.
Yeah.
He can
is
lift Thor's hammer.
You thought the same thing with Thanos. Like, this is the most powerful villain, the most powerful character.
Work up to it. And then you thought the same thing with Captain Marvel.
Absolutely.
That you're just like, dude, she just flew through a whole spaceship. Like, who can touch her?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're introduced to Thanos. And
Yeah.
then you're like, who in the world could touch this dude?
Right.
Well, and then you saw Captain Marvel just kind of like hand him his shit. And so now we're seeing that like, oh no, like, and then you saw a glimpse of it in Endgame where Wanda's like, oh no, dude, you pissed me off, and she's starting to take out Thanos.
Sure.
And Thanos, like, without doing the thing, Rain of Fire,
Right.
he gets his ass whipped right there by Wanda.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting how they keep like subverting your expectations of like, no, this person is like maximum powerful, and then nope. Here's somebody that can like handle that.
Our first in the MCU, our first iteration is a human character, Tony Stark.
Yep.
And he himself, you could say, has no superpowers outside of billionaire, playboy, philanthropist,
Right.
in that order. And then you've kind of like the step has almost gotten into, and this is something that we mentioned in the episode from a couple weeks ago, is the movement into spirituality and the occult. And like there's almost a kind of a progression in Marvel where these characters now are either born with these features or are not from this planet or not from this universe or not from, this kind of plane of being.
Right.
And you have Marvel now playing with spirituality and to some degree religion, especially with this, witch character, not only with Scarlet Witch, but with Agatha Harkness. Thank you. You have Marvel playing with some of these like spiritual realm kind of characters that they didn't start with.
Right.
You started with a dude who just happened to be able to, create stuff.
Right.
And now you're with characters who like, are affected by these things they don't understand.
I suppose. Like I don't know. I don't put it into that realm personally because like I put Scarlet Witch in the same realm as Doctor Strange. Obviously, like she was born with something, and I think that's going to lead to mutants.
Sure.
But she was born with something that gave her an extra ability.
Right.
And I thought that was so clever of that being how they survived the Stark bomb was that she put a hex on it that gave them like favorable probability that this could perhaps be a dud.
Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant.
And she didn't at that point, she didn't know that that's what was going on. Cause she's a kid.
Yeah. She didn't know she had those powers.
Right.
And then it was the Mind Stone that unlocked the Scarlet Witch inside of her. So freaking smart. I thought that was so cool. That was such a clever way to do that. Because we've always understood that that's how she survived.
Right.
Was it was just a dud.
Right.
And we're like, okay, well, we can explain that. But to understand that, like, oh shit, like she actually
it was a dud, but
that.
she did it. Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
But no, I put it in that same realm of almost of like, and possibly like Agatha's in that same kind of realm of it doesn't require a belief in anything to do it.
Right. But you've introduced this character and you've called her a witch. You have a clear reference now to 1693 with Salem witch trials. You have all of that. You cannot ignore all the religious implications that surround that.
And
that's what I'm
when
saying.
Agatha's doing her shit, she's talking in Latin.
Absolutely. So like
I get
you've made that connection.
Parallel.
Right.
But I still don't believe that they're issuing it as a religion.
Okay. Yeah, and I can agree to that. Like I don't
think it's faith based.
But what's interesting is this goes back to our conversation about China is like now, even though they never introduced Mephisto, how are they going to, I think Marvel does a very good job of skirting that line of like, yeah, here's some occult things, witchcraft, and
goat's heads.
Exact, and runes and that kind of stuff, but also we're not going to fully deal with it. It's almost like Soul doesn't fully deal with the afterlife. I just find it interesting that Marvel is dealing more with the occult aspects of superheroes.
Right.
And like that kind of ties back to our discussion a couple weeks ago of like, how are they going to do this? How are they going to, factor into other elements?
Right. Especially like as you start to introduce like, Blade is supposed to be coming.
Right.
He's vampires and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And then you've got Moon Knight coming soon, which that is like Egyptian.
Exactly.
But at the same time they've been doing this the whole time with
Oh,
Thor.
For sure.
Like Thor is a religious
Thor is
entity.
A god. Absolutely. But they've also kind of like minimized that as well of like
they nailed it in the Dark World where they explained it as like your magic is our science.
Exactly.
And it just makes sense that way. And like that's just the way they'll always be able to deal with those types of things.
For
is
sure.
Just to explain it as like the way you see it as this, we see it as this.
Right. But so I want to talk real quick about the quick like philosophical conversation that Vision has with White Vision, which is really a version of himself.
Right.
And I love.
Were you aware of White Vision?
Yeah. Like as a character.
Well, just more or less. Like I mean, I knew that was part of his design at some point in time.
Right.
And I remember there being an arcade game
Sure.
back in the 90s that was the Avengers, and you could play Captain America and Iron Man, and they were like their weird 90s versions of them. And I remember there being the White Vision.
Right.
At the time, I didn't know that was the White Vision,
No,
or that
me
this
neither.
was like a separate version of
Like
him.
I knew he existed, but I didn't know why.
Yeah, I just knew that was a character in that video game that I liked playing at the arcade.
Yep. Arcades, what are those?
That's a place where you waste money.
Okay.
That's a whole nother conversation.
You're right. So what I like is what Marvel has kind of also been known for is like interspersing these, not only humanist qualities that we've already talked about, but these like thought-provoking instances
Right.
of like, Did you think about this? Or
philosophy.
For
that's
sure.
what we love.
Absolutely. So Vision says to White Vision, you are, or I am you and you are me. And it stops the White Vision in its tracks. Like,
White Vision is sent in to kill Vision.
Right. By sword. So, sure.
And then Wanda's vision suggests to White Vision, all right, well, who is Vision?
Right, exactly. What is Vision? That's literally
basically give me a definition of who is Vision, what is Vision.
And they're in the middle of this fairly epic battle, and I love that the battle is also taking place in what amounts to the library.
Right.
Like they're like duking it out in the library.
Right.
And then the White Vision like stops in his tracks and like explicate. That's not what he says, but he basically like explain what you mean. Like give me what you were saying.
What is your objective?
Exactly. And
he's like, well, I've got to kill the Vision.
Yeah.
All right. So but what makes the Vision?
Exactly.
And it's that classic idea of like, who are we?
Right.
Are you your thoughts? Are you your soul? Exactly. Are you your body?
So he brings up the Theseus ship, which essentially is a thought experiment of a ship is, replaced. Planks of this ship is replaced. I'm kind of boiling it down.
Ship comes into dry dock.
Right.
And it needs repairs.
Right.
So over time, every single original piece is removed for a replacement part.
Exactly. So is the ship and by the end of this, there is no single part that was part of the original ship.
Right.
It's all
had
new.
to been replaced.
Right. So is that the ship, or is a combination of all those parts? If I were to collect all those parts and put all those parts that were,
original.
Right. Put all those back together. Is that the ship? What makes the ship? And it's this really interesting thought experiment of, like you just said, who are we? What are we? Because we know, I think it's something like every 7 years, we're essentially a brand new set of ourselves.
Cells fall apart.
Right. Exactly. And I think we might have even referenced this in a previous episode too. But it's this idea of like, what makes us who we are? What makes anything what it is? Like even, we're sitting here in the library, but the library is only the library because we've designated it the library. If someone buys this space in the next 5 years, it's no longer the library, but it also is the library for us because we've always called it that.
In this moment in time.
Well, in any moment in time. In 30 years, you're going to reminisce on this place, and it is the library. But it also isn't the library.
But it won't be the library. Yeah.
Exactly. You see what I'm saying? So it's this like really interesting perception of like who we are, how we view the world. And that to me is also what sets Marvel apart from, or not only superhero movies, but also movies in general, that you're bringing in these thought experiments to such a wide audience. Now, is a 10-year-old watching this going to be like, holy shit, never thought of that? Probably not. But that also is a success.
Made some really interesting conversations in my household.
That's super interesting. Yeah.
Really, really quickly, like which Vision is the Vision?
Now, currently?
Well, no, because we know it's Wanda's Vision got
toasted.
He got removed.
So
he got deleted.
It's the White Vision, and
but
he
even
puts
in
himself,
even in that thought experiment, though, of the instance of where you had the Vision's body, and then essentially what was the Vision's memories.
Right. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see Wanda Maximoff and this White Vision eventually come together. Because
that's what I was hoping.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's what I was hoping was going to happen in that last.
When
they were in there,
they were going to
somehow something was going to happen.
That would give you too much, and they're not going to give you that because now they have something to kind of hold over your head, almost of like, well, the Vision just like,
where is
jettisoned off out? Who knows where
did
is?
He go?
Yeah, exactly. And he's going to eventually come find you because now the White Vision is the Vision because he has all of the Vision's memories now,
right?
And he has all of that background
the data.
Exactly.
That was so like such a cold way of saying it.
Yeah, exactly.
You have the data now.
Yeah, here's all the stuff.
You are the full Vision.
Sure.
Super cold though.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know. He's just like, I am the Vision.
Right.
And he, boom.
Yeah.
Out of there. We'll see.
All
right. So I guess to tie this conversation up, WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
Did WandaVision improve the MCU for you? What's your kind of takeaway from it?
Holistically, I think it improves the MCU from a cinematic, cinephile perspective. It's now taken these superhero movies and has kind of said, like, here's what we can do with it. Here's what we can play. Here's the risks we're willing to take. Ultimately, we're still giving you a superhero movie, but here's the risks that we're willing or here's the lengths that we're willing to go in order to deliver on this. I think for me, it starts to bridge the gap between the first 10 years of the MCU and ultimately what they're thinking of achieving.
Right.
And I think that makes it successful. What about you?
Like within the series itself, it's amazing how meta it is.
100%
like,
so.
The director of the series was a child actor who was first in Growing Pains.
Right.
Which is like, one of the things that they reference in one of the episodes. You can't ignore the fact that Elizabeth Olsen is the sister of
one of the most successful family sitcoms,
the baby from Full House.
Yeah.
But like so meta
Sure.
in all the things of like the recasting of Pietro.
Right.
All of these tropes that, I mean, it's just like mind-boggling how depth they pushed everything. And I think that's like the one thing that I get out of this series, that it is so unique to the MCU in what seems like such a simple, like kind of throwaway series.
It feels effortless. And that to me is the true art form of it. Is
totally.
Like all of these things you're dealing with, you've made it feel effortless.
Yeah, you made it seem almost inconsequential, but when you really look into it, it's like, holy crap.
Like all the orchestration here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it adds such a depth to the MCU to know where we're going to go from now. We've been confirmed that Wanda's going to be in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and what kind of can that's going to open up.
Absolutely.
In terms of like just the craziness, and then how all of this, because then Doctor Strange is supposed to be in the next Spider-Man, No Way Home, and all the rumors that are surrounding that movie of just like, man, like the next, I don't know, year or so should be like just bananas.
Listen, we follow a bunch of like specific Marvel podcasts on Twitter, and like these people are going just nuts over like all the content that now they have for the next, honestly, like 20 years.
Yeah.
Because they really do.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
I mean,
I've got plenty more.
For sure.
I could go on for days on this stuff.
We try to keep this under 6 hours.
Well, what was your favorite part?
Oh, God. For me, like, it's not a singular moment. It's not here's my favorite part. It's, as a whole, this is a study in grief and what someone's willing to go through, and how perfectly that lines up with like the current kind of cultural, stasis
where we are in the world.
Yeah, of like, man, we're all kind of down, we're all experiencing this. And like, I think it could not have come at a better time, of also her recognition of grief has an end, this depression has an end, and now I have to continue on. And how do I
come out of my own hex?
Yep, exactly. And that's exactly it. Like, we create our own worlds, and we create this like insular nature of that, of our own selves, and how like all encompassing, and also how crushing that is. And yet also, when we recognize that there's a world outside of it, when we recognize that like, I have to eventually come out of this, like how freeing that is. And I think that is, to me, the big takeaway here. Okay, so what about you?
I think the depth that it brings the MCU of breaking out of this like episodic movie, you get a movie every 4 or 5 months,
sure,
kind of thing, and breaking it down into an opportunity to like deep dive into specific characters, and which I think I would argue is always what's made these movies fascinating,
right,
is that you get an appreciation for character depth that you don't in some other versions. The fact that we can really deep dive into Wanda and Vision is just nothing but candy. Yeah. Like it just makes it so much better. So I think there's nothing but goodness to come from these Marvel.
All right. Well, we want to know what you think about WandaVision. Same question to you. What is your opinion of like this kind of new version of Marvel? These, is this the right direction for Marvel? What are your thoughts on WandaVision in and of itself?
Yeah. I mean, were you disappointed by that final episode? Were you kind of let down? Or, did you binge all of it and you were just kind of happy to see it come to a conclusion?
For sure. We also want to know if you've had the Peat Monster, what do you think about it? Because I'm a fan.
Yeah, me too.
It's pretty good.
Really good, and I like that little kick and proof.
Yeah.
Always helps.
And I'll maintain the aesthetic is is good too.
The spaghetti monster.
Spaghetti, the Dolly Spaghetti Monster.
Yeah.
Well, you can get in touch with us through email. That's drepandstone@gmail.com. You can also get in touch with us through social media.
It's always one word, Drep and Stone, DREP and Stone. Come find us out there. Like us. We'd like you right back.
Yeah, and if you want to help support the podcast, you can do so in one of three ways, or honestly, three of three ways if you want to do that as well.
Ooh, the trifecta.
The hat trick, if you will. Number one, you can support the podcast through our Buy Me a Coffee page. That's buymeacoffee.com/drepandstone. Help to financially support the podcast. Help to keep everything running.
Gives you some joy. It'll also get you some swag.
Absolutely. I see some koozies over here. And is that a coaster?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty sexy.
Yeah. Buy us a pint. We'll send you a coaster to sit it on.
100%. You can also support the podcast by like literally grabbing someone by the lapels and screaming in their face with a mask on, of course. But screaming in their face, have you listened to the newest episode of Drep and Stone?
Because it's amazing. It will blow your mind.
Yes. So that's way number two. Way number three is you can review us on wherever you find Drip and Stone. Just leave a quick review and it helps people find the podcast.
Yeah. Google, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever you found it. Like it, star it. 2 thumbs way up.
Because that's super helpful too.
For sure.
Hey buddy, may your glass overflow.
And your ass never show. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
They get these little feathers.
Ugh.
Whiskey burp.
Oh, like peated whiskey burp. I think it's the
Smoky burp. Sure shit. Okay.
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 Sure. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
They have a fetish for killing Vision. We are off the rails on this conversation.
You're not wrong.
I apologize. That's my fault. Do we need to wrangle this back in? It'll be.
Are you throwing gang signs over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, I want to point out that you went before me.